Well, Indian police have arrested a prominent activist in the Himalayan region of Ladakh 2 days after violent protests in which 5 people were killed. Sonam Wangchuk, seen here in archive footage meeting the Dalai Lama, campaigns for the environment and tribal rights in Ladakh. Police accuse him of inciting the trouble. The remote region of Ladakh is within disputed Kashmir, which borders Pakistan and China. Ladakh has been governed by India since 2019. A curfew is in place in the regional capital Leh. Protesters are demanding more political autonomy for Ladakh and for job quotas that guarantee employment for local people.
Ladakh's young people want change. What started as a protest for greater autonomy descended into violent clashes when protesters threw stones at police. They fired back, killing at least 5 people. In total, more than 100 people were injured, including 30 police officers and these men.
We were protesting peacefully. They shot at a peaceful protest, and that's why so many people were injured.
When our protest started, both sides also started throwing stones. Then they started firing at us, and I got shot in my knee. I collapsed right at that moment. Later, I saw I was injured in many places.
Amidst the chaos, cars, paramilitary vehicles and government buildings were set on fire, including the local office of India's ruling BJP party. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government has administered the Buddhist Muslim enclave since 2019.
It is very unfortunate, and I'm deeply shocked and aggrieved, and I'm in grief right now. I do not understand as to who gave the orders to shoot people. There are multiple Supreme Court judgments, there are multiple laws, guidelines as to how you should not resort to shooting people, but people have been shot.
Officials say gatherings of more than 5 people and a curfew are now being enforced by hundreds of police and paramilitary officers in the Leh and Kargil districts. In a bid to find a solution, local representatives have held several rounds of talks with Indian officials in recent years. The next meeting is scheduled for early October.
One prominent opposition figure in Ladakh says the protests are fueled by frustration.
The shooting by the security forces provoked the young people even more. The protesters were between the ages of 15 to 26 years old. All of them were young. They're not illiterate. They're educated, but they're unemployed and angry.
Well, Saiba Varma has conducted ethnographic research in this region. She's Associate Professor of Anthropology at the University of California, San Diego. Hello and welcome to DW. Just tell us initially, what strikes you most about what you're seeing in Ladakh right now?
Well, what I see in Ladakh is actually the culmination of several years of growing frustration with Indian government rule in the region. I think we need to understand the historical background at stake here. So in 2019, the Indian government removed statehood of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh and transformed the region into 2 union territories that are directly governed by New Delhi. Actually, this was a long-standing demand by people in Ladakh because they thought having union territory status would actually give them greater autonomy. Unfortunately, that has not come to pass. What they found is actually a loss of autonomy, a loss of rights, rights over local governance, rights over the environment. They've seen many large-scale infrastructural and development projects taking place in this very ecologically fragile region. As your story just spoke about, there's widespread unemployment. Ladakh has the 6th highest unemployment, youth unemployment in all of India. And so all of these problems are have culminated into, I think, the rising anger and, unfortunately, the outbreak of violence that we've seen over the last few days.
Yeah, you've been talking about this loss of autonomy and a growing anger, which is being fueled by, as I understand, Gen Z. It's been called a Gen Z protest wave. Just tell us, how is Gen Z in Ladakh shaping protests differently perhaps from what older generations might have done?
Yes, so this is a really important question, because I think this term Gen Z is being used in two ways, kind of two diametrically opposite ways. So on the one hand, I think the Indian government is labeling these protesters as Gen Z in order to draw connections with Nepal, with Sri Lanka, with Bangladesh, and to somehow give the impression that these are not really indigenous protests, that these are somehow protests that are being fomented from outside. On the other hand, I think when we think about these as a youth movement, what we're seeing is that, people in Ladakh have been protesting for many years. Leaders of Ladakh have been on more than 5 hunger strikes. They have had peaceful rallies. They have marched hundreds of kilometers from Leh to Delhi to try to get their demands heard from the Indian government. And there is, I think, a sense of frustration from the younger generation that those peaceful methods are not working, that their voices are not being heard, and that frustration has bubbled over.
And if I just understand, you're sort of saying that characterising these protests solely as being driven by the youth and Gen Z is perhaps a bit unfair?
Yes, I think there are multiple generations of people in Ladakh who have participated in these demands for statehood. And, the major kind of demands that have brought together people in Ladakh, I do want to say that this is a region that has 97% of its population is indigenous or tribal. You have about 40% of the population that is Buddhist, the rest are Muslim, and everyone has sort of come together around 4 core issues that have to do with the restoration of statehood, demands for greater employment access, restoration of tribal and indigenous rights, as well as a protection of the environment. And so I think these are broad-based demands, and I think just characterizing them as Gen Z, in a sense, perhaps limits, actually, I think, the widespread appeal of many of these demands.
We've been speaking with anthropologist Saiba Varma in San Diego. Thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you.